Yo, what's going on YouTube? This is Bro Man Clash back out one at one. How y'all doing? I know it's been quite some time, but some things popped up, some personal things, and overall just life in general. But aside from that introduction that explains my absence, I want to talk about a topic because today marks the 20th anniversary of a particular event. Nothing negative, but it has something to do with positivity. It's very beautiful because it takes on issues that not many people are willing to talk about today, and it's not going to get the proper media coverage. And that topic is the Million Man March. Originally, the Million Man March started back in October 10th or October 16th, depending on which day you look at it, of 1995. Now, this is pretty significant because this is its 20th anniversary this day. Now, well, ignore the trains. If you hear something in the background, that's just the trains or doors opening and closing. But now, let's talk about this a bit more. Now, what was going on during the 90s? You gotta ask, why was the 1 Million Man March or a Million Man March, even though it was probably more than just a million? Well, think about what was going on in the 90s. The crack epidemic was starting to slow down, but it was still at its peak. Black on black crime, police brutality, especially with Amun Diallo, which I believe occurred back in 1996 or 1995 as well. But there was also the notable Rodney King riots where something happened where Rodney King got beaten by police back in LA back in 1991. I think it was March, I believe, or October 11th. Now, that was pretty significant because with the rise of police brutality and the rise of black lives, particularly that of the black man being killed off, being brutalized, and being murdered, and especially when the war on so-called drugs, the war on drugs, the reason why I say the war on drugs in air quotations is because there was no war on drugs. That was all bullshit. They just needed an excuse to come into our communities so they could fuck us over. I mean, think about it. A myth. And then the Million Man March came down because of the fact that people really needed to say what the hell they had to say, especially when it came right down to Black lives. Now, how does this tie in with Black Lives Matter? And how does this tie in with, the black struggle and, the civil rights struggle in general? Especially with Malcolm X, Dr. King, Rosa Parks, all those other leaders. What were they all about? Now, how do they, along with a few other leaders of the black struggle, influence the Million Man March? It actually goes hand in hand. Now, this is pretty significant when it comes right down to the Black Lives Matters movement and the 1 Million Man struggle, even though they come in two different times. See, look, the 1 Million Man March, not 1 Million Man struggle, sorry about that, 1 Million Man March. The reason why the 1 Million Man March was pretty significant was because the 1 Million Man March was standing up for something. It was a peaceful protest, no violence, it was peaceful. Everybody had to say what they had to say. Nobody was agitated. Nobody was getting violent. Nobody was getting rowdy. And and they were standing up for a cause that was pretty important. And what was that? To talk about the unfairness that the black man, the black woman, the black child, black boy, black girl don't care. If you were black, you experienced the same shit. The black struggle experience. Now, some of you may ask, what's the black struggle experience? And how does this tie in with the 1 Million Man March? Now, the 1 Million Man March was talking about the black struggle or the black experience. Now, when we deal with the black experience, you must also look at, what happened with slavery, what happened with, what happened back in the civil rights era, Reconstruction era, and then tying all in, especially when you're looking at from a 20-year anniversary. And besides, I was only like 7 months old when it happened. And even though I did not know what the hell was going on, of course, I was a 7-month-old little guy. So what did I know of? But anyways, let's talk about this movement and how the way it also harkens back to the civil rights era, the Reconstruction era, and how the way black folks started standing up for themselves and start saying like enough is enough. Some of you may say we're talking about economic power. Some of you may say we're talking about, revolutionary struggle. But the 1 Million Man March was a demonstration of the fact that the black man is not going to take it anymore. And the fact that the black man, black woman, black child, especially when it came right down to peace, they didn't want to take it anymore because, when it came right down to it, it had to be either do or die, or it had to be, hey, live on, die on our feet or live on our knees. And how many people did you know lived on their knees as opposed to down on their feet? This is pretty significant, and especially when I want to talk about the connections between the 1 Million Man March and the Civil Rights Struggle. See, the Civil Rights Struggle is what is it well known for? Especially when it comes right down to, the black lives. It was well known for because it was talking about changing laws, changing the infrastructure, changing economical standing, even though that was going on back in the Reconstruction era, but it was not as organized compared to the Civil Rights era. And you want to know what the real funny part is? I gotta give like a bit of a critique on the conscious community, because there are like these so-called conscious leaders that always want to talk all this job, talking about, hey, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to say, we need to come together, but you got to do it my way. No, because that's your ego talking. Check your ego before you try to wreck everybody else's lives. And that's the only thing I gotta say about the conscious community. And yeah, and then they got like huge ass egos and all that shit. But how's this tie in with this 1 million man march now, or the Million Man March? It ties in because it's not about ego. It's not about who's right, who's wrong. It's about standing up for what is right instead of who is right. Now, if you stand up for what is right instead of standing for who is right, you'll realize that you have one common enemy. Now, how does this tie in with the Civil Rights era? That's how this is tying into the Reconstruction era. It was talking about black independence, black significance, and also black contribution. And also it was talking about black survival. And when you take away the survival aspect of a people, you're left with a dead people. Thus they're not able to be themselves or able to walk or even talk or even try to do things on their own. Now, you got like a lot of people that will just look down or even try to flat out ignore the 1 Million Man March or Million Man March because, either they say, oh, it's too peaceful, oh, it's not very significant, or it doesn't show the savagery of black people. It doesn't show that. And it's just like, yo, wait a minute, man. This shows off the fact that we can not only be organized, but we can also prove a point that, hey, we don't need money. We don't need, white money. We don't need any kind of legislative infrastructure to try to tell us what to do. If we know something's up, we gotta talk about it, and it's gotta be talked about. Now, this also goes hand in hand with the civil rights era, because the civil rights era was all about the same thing. If you notice, both of them parallel each other, marching, talking about what's really going on, especially when there are massive amount of black lives being lost. Now it's more talking about black lives, brown lives, poor white lives, native lives. But at the same time, it's more specifically talking about black lives, especially when it's talking about the lives of black men. Now, not to disrespect the women, because the women's lives matter too, especially black women's lives matter too. But the reason why the black man is actually the prime candidate to get shot, to get rejected from a job, to overall be disrespected, is because there was like, ever since slavery, there has been like a sort of a paranoia fear towards the black male. the black man image. Like they think that, oh, if we degrade the black man, the black woman won't even look at him and just think like he's nothing but trash. Then civil rights era, Reconstruction era, and then what's going on in today's era. And that's really significant because it shows off that, hey, not only the black man can stand up and talk for himself and also be more, poetically, eloquently inclined, he's also able to be himself. He's also able to be passionate. He's able to be compassionate. He's able to show empathy. He's able to show that he loves his people, as opposed to what you see on TV, what they're willing to show off that black men are nothing but savages. They're nothing but heathens. They're just all gun tooting and not thinking, like they can't think for themselves. And then civil rights era did the same thing too, especially when you got, white people, well, poor, illiterate, racist white people, trying to follow rich white people's example so they could be a part of their structure. Putting up racist picket signs, so like, nigger, go home. Or you 2, 4, 6, 8, we don't want to integrate. Now, and then you have like a mass murder of, black lives, black men, black women, black children, don't care, getting burned at the stake, getting hung, getting lynched, getting tarred and feathered, whatever was going on with them, getting raped, getting their heads blown off. Hell, even some white people got some reaction too. And I don't mean to say action in terms of like, a brutal way, but it's just to say a point. If you get involved in our struggle, prepare for death. That's inevitable. We already accept the fact that we're going to die. Hence why we're not afraid to speak out and to live. Now, some of you may say, how does this tie in with the civil rights? But Clash, how does this tie in with, the civil rights era? How does this tie in with, the Reconstruction era? And how does this tie in, with everything else in between? Especially when it comes right down to Black Lives Matter. Well, think about it. If you look at the Reconstruction era and how many black lives were lost, look at the Civil Rights era and how many black lives were lost, especially due to prejudiced attitudes. And then you see like what happened in today's times, especially with the rise of police brutality. Matter of fact, police brutality has always been on the rise. So what's the point of talking about that? And then you got to talk about, what happened with Kimani Gray, what happened with Walter Scott, what happened with Freddie Gray, I believe, and then what happened with Tracy Chapman, what happened to Sandra Bland, what happened to, Amun Diallo, I'm going back to the 1990s now. What happened with Rodney King, and then what happened with various other people who got killed, especially what happened with Tamar Rice. Because I remember when I did a topic on like Tamar Rice and releasing police killings, I mentioned that what happened with the Charleston shooting. But I remember I saw a video of an old white guy pointing and swinging a gun around like this. Just police didn't do anything. They didn't shoot him. They were just like, put the gun down. Rolled up on Tamar Rice. Bang! Shot him down right then and there. And then that shows like a disregard for life, especially for a young black life. And then the Million Man March is making a statement when it came right down to talking about black lives, especially when it happened like 20 years ago. And it's still talking about what is going on now. Because evidently, I understand black on black crime has been going on for quite some time, and they love highlighting that. They love highlighting our negatives. They love that. But when we highlight their negatives, they like to say, oh, you're a racist. Oh, black people shouldn't come together. We're so used to them just killing each other. Like, man, bullshit. You know damn well there was a white hand in orchestrating our destruction. Now, why is that pretty significant? It's significant because it talks about what is really going on. And why did I mention a white hand and a black problem? Sometimes you'll see me in my videos talking about there's a white hand and a black problem. Think about it. The FBI, CIA, they took out the Panthers. Yes, and they were what? Majority white. And I'm not saying like you should go against white people. I'm not trying to say that. What you should be really going against, what I mean by white hand, and no, not a Pokemon reference. What I mean by white hand, I mean something that represents capitalism, white privilege, white supremacy. That's what it represents. If you notice, when I'm talking about white supremacy, when I'm talking about the so-called white hand, I'm talking about something far greater than just a couple of people. I'm talking about a structure. And the 1 Million Man March goes against that structure because it notices, see, the Million Man March is a representation and the fact that we're not going to take it anymore. 20 years later, we're still not going to take it. Hence why I have major support for it. And the Civil Rights era was an answer to Jim Crow. Reconstruction era was an answer to what? I think the black codes. It was an answer to like what happened back in slavery. And the fact that Jim Crow started to come up. It was at the nadir of Jim Crow. It was at the nadir of the Civil Rights era. Its zenith point, we don't really know. Some say the Civil Rights era was its zenith point. Some people actually think this is its zenith point. But every time there's a zenith point, there's got to be a down slope. And apparently, we haven't reached the down slope yet. If, the 1 Million Man March serves as an example, come on, man. And I mentioned about black on black crime. And then how does this tie in with, white supremacy? And how does this tie in with, the 1 Million Man March? Because black on black crime is the opposite of black on black love. Now, what I mean by black on black love, I'm not talking about sex and all that crap. I'm talking about, showing compassion, showing respect, and actually sitting down, talking to each other, man, actually understanding where we're coming from, instead of just thinking like, oh, wait a minute, why should I listen to you? You're a Crip, you're blood, man. Why should I listen to you? You're from a different country. You're from a different continent. Why should I listen to you? You're not part of my background. You're not from the same, stage of life that I'm from. So why should I listen to you? And that's how black on black violence stems from. It stems from not only from a misconception of who you're talking to or from the life that you're trying to speak to, but it also talks about the life of, of somebody who looks just like you. And sometimes some people may say like, why you always say like, when you point at yourself, you always say like people who look just like me. Well, if you go ignoring the phenotype, but look at the genotype, some of us, how the way they say like 99.9 of us are actually the same or alike in some ways, but then there's that 0.01% that makes us totally different. Now that's what I mean in terms of the scientific level, that we are like people look just like me, and also dealing with the topic of relatability. Sure, me and you may not have the same struggles. Some of you, sure, me and you may not have, the same lifestyle. Some of you may say I live a very good lifestyle. Some of you may say that, hey, I look poor as shit. Hey, look, man, you know what they say about a pearl. Don't catch your pearl before swine, or beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But at the same time, the 1 Million Man March was not only going against white supremacy, because white supremacy loves seeing black lives being destroyed. Why do you think, why do you think some of these rogue cops who just get paid leave? Why do you think some of these rogue officers who just say, oh, I just committed a mistake, raping women in jail cells, and then, shooting little kids, maiming women who are pregnant, breaking veterans' necks, and then all that other crap, and then good cops. You know what they say about kids who are good in school, right? they're just, you know what they say about good citizens, and you know what they say about, good niggers. And it's kind of funny because the concept goes around in the same way as well. Because what they say about good people are submissive. Good people mind their own business. Good people ignore social injustices. Good people ignore everything. Good people just stay submissive. Good people don't even do shit. They just say, oh, that's just life. Let's just ignore it. That's just life. You know what, man? That's not good. And I remember there was a quote that said this: when good people do nothing, that's evil. Matter of fact, when good people do nothing, when there's evil around, that's evil enough. And I remember that from, y'all gonna laugh, but I remember that from Street Fighter the movie. And that was like 7 years ago. And I'm said by dollars. He said, when good people do nothing when there's evil around, that's evil enough. That's the same concept of good cops, good people, good Christians, good, good N words and all that other crap. But if you want to know what a real good person does, they don't try to, be submissive. They actually stand up and say something. They stand up and say, look, that is not right. They say, hey, look, when you see the weak getting beaten, you stand up and say, look, that's not right. When you see a woman about to get raped, man, you gotta stand and say, or do something, and do something that's like, yo, nah, I'm not gonna stand there while injustice is right there. See, look, there's a difference between, some of you may say there's a difference between a good person and a righteous person. But let me tell you something, good and righteous are synonymous with each other. I guess it might depend on the action, depending on how you look at it. But anyways, when you look at the 1 Million Man March, that did show off, the stereotypical good nigger complex or good nigga complex. And I'm sorry if y'all get offended by me using the N word, but I'm just gonna keep it real. That did not show off that complex. And you know what they said about good niggers and bad niggers, back then, especially during slavery times. They said, that's a good nigger right there. He does his work. He doesn't complain. He just does what he's told. Even when I'm raping his wife. Even when I'm beating his back, he still does his. He still does his. He still does his little tricks. And then, they called him the house Negro or the house nigger. And then, bad niggas, they called them, rebels, renegades. They want to kill slave masters because they were fed up with the sting of the whip. They were fed up with just being, brutalized. They were fed up with their women getting raped. They were fed up with all that. And guess what? They are not bad niggers. They're good black folks. Great black people. Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, Harriet Tubman, Booker T. Washington to a degree, W.B. Du Bois to a degree, Marcus Garvey to a degree, Obertor El Toussaint to a degree, and Granny Nanny to a degree. They stood against slavery and said enough is enough. But some of you may say, like, you name people that's from outside the United States where the 1 Million Man March is happening. How do these people connect? Because their spirit is invoked by that. We are invoking their spirit. We are invoking who they are and what they stand for in terms of the 1 Million Man March. See, the 1 Million Man March, whether you're talking about man, woman, child, boy, girl, transgender, don't care. Matter of fact, transgender people are still, to me, still have a bit of a gender because they still identify with man or woman, so it doesn't even matter. You may not agree with that, but that's how the way I see it. But when it comes right down to it, we are standing people like them, people like Mr. Louis Farrakhan. May the great one, grace his soul because he's doing great things despite media bringing him down, media dogging him and all that shit, he still got my support. And the 1 million man march still got my support. And let me finish it off by saying that the 1 million man march represents what does it mean to truly stand up and be free. What is it because of its representation? The fact that you can come from different backgrounds, you can come from that. But as soon as you come up with something that you have in common, especially if you're African origin here in North America, you will realize that, wait a minute, we are not so different after all. We're still experiencing police brutality. We're still in fear of, like, if the brother from right next to us is going to kill us. We're still afraid if we're going to get rejected. We're still going to get afraid if we're not going to get a job. We're going to be afraid regardless. But if you're afraid and you do nothing, that halts your progression. Thus, you will die miserably. And to be straight up honest, the 1 million man march not only represents the first step of progression, but it also represents the first step towards coming back to our original selves. And with that, YouTube, it's great to be back after like a bit of a hiatus. I won this bro mad class saying, like, I love y'all. If y'all agree with what I said, then y'all agree. If y'all disagree, y'all disagree. But like I say, that's life. Hope y'all stay up. And if y'all out there in the new 1 million man march, kudos to y'all. And y'all have my respects. All right? Later.